A strength a day, be your best every day. Hi, I'm Adimus, founder and director of Strength Optimizer. I aim to help you stay healthy, be happier, and deal with challenges with greater resilience. What do you see, hear, taste, and notice when you're out in the nature? Do you know that noticing nature can enhance your well-being? Today, you will meet Dr. Holli-Anne Passmore from Canada. Holli-Anne will show you what you can do to enhance your well-being by noticing and engaging with everyday nature. Thank you. Hi, I'm Adimus, founder and director of Strength Optimizer. Thank you for watching Strength Optimizer's The Science Up Your Wellbeing series. Today, we had Dr. Holli-Anne Passmore joining us from Canada. Holli-Anne is an assistant professor of psychology, director of the Nature Meaning in Life Research Lab at the Concordia University of Edmonton, and editor with the International Journal of Wellbeing, and the academic lead for the topic of the living environment and well-being with the Global Wellbeing Initiatives. She is a wellbeing researcher whose primary areas of interest focus on how everyday nature can enhance many aspects of well-being and pathways to enhancing meaning in our lives. I'm so grateful to have you today, Holli-Anne. How are you doing?
I am doing great. It's such an honor to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No worries. And once again, thank you for taking the time to share how we can enhance our well-being through noticing everyday nature. Holli-Anne, as mentioned earlier, one of your research interests is on nature and well-being, and to be specific, how noticing everyday nature and building one's connection to the nature can enhance various aspects of well-being. I mean, personally for myself, when I think about the nature, immediately I think about trees, plants, forests, mountains, and beach. So how do you actually define nature and well-being?
That is such a great question because so when I think nature, I tend to think mountains and pine trees because I spent a lot of time in Jasper, and it was very interesting. I haven't traveled a lot, but it was very interesting to me when I was in the UK last year for almost a year. When they think their definition of what they think of as nature is very different than mine. Like I would certainly never think beach right off the bat. Yeah. So right, because I don't live by the beach anywhere. But for research purposes and in general, when I'm writing about research and speaking about, writing about nature and speaking about nature, I'm really talking about pretty much anything that isn't human made. So like the sun, the stars, the squirrels, birds, non-human animal species, the plants in your house, the tree at the bus stop, all of that. And it's one of the things I think that people really forget when they're talking about how nature is beneficial to well-being. I think people always seem to think of, oh, I have to get out in the wilderness or have to go to a city park. And it's like, you know what, I bet you money that you've got a plant in your house. Or that you can look outside and see a tree, and that's nature. So I'm really talking about it in that everyday kind of sense.
Yep. And that's so good to know that the definitions of nature actually encompasses, includes anything, as you say, that's non-human, and that actually, I guess, it gives us a lot more ideas and creativity to explore perhaps something that's just within our backyard or in our living environments or in the working environment as well, rather than having this concept, as you say. And now for me, living in Australia, going to the beach is a privilege and enjoy that, or doing what we call bushwalking or hiking, so something I enjoy doing as well. But actually, we can bring this so-called concept or definition of nature much closer to home as well.
Beautifully said. That's exactly what I'm very much trying to do with my research, and when I speak on this, is those everyday kinds of nature. And then, and the other half of your question was, what am I talking about when I speak of well-being? And often when, in positive psych, or the science of well-being, people seem to often focus on happiness. And happiness, of course, it's a good thing. But at the same time, it's a small slice of what well-being is. So I'm really looking at certainly happiness, but also feelings of peace and contentment, and big feelings of wonder and feeling emotionally moved and feeling uplifted and feeling really connected to other people and to life.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at that whole shebang kind of
Yeah.
thing when I say well-being.
Yeah, yeah, it's what we call the whole wide range of positive emotions, especially when you're talking about this sense of awe, this sense of wonder, this sense, oh, there's something that is bigger than me, than myself, when I look into nature.
Yes, very much so, right? Like and I really think that's important when we speak about well-being, that the gamut of it, those big emotions, and then
Mm,
there's just a nice feeling of peacefulness and
yeah,
contentment, or I don't know what the feeling would be, but a feeling of beauty and hope.
yeah,
So big range of emotions.
yeah. The appreciations of beauty. We talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. So, based on your research, what is the relationship between noticing nature and enhancing our well-being?
So in my research, I've developed a very specific noticing nature intervention called noticing nature intervention, because it wasn't
All right.
particularly creatively named. Um, and this is a really basic intervention. And this is
Mm,
really just simply in your everyday routine, just notice how the nature around you makes
yeah.
you feel.
Okay.
That's really the whole thing. Just notice how the nature makes you feel. And then when I'm running a study, I ask people to jot it down, and
Mm,
then either like what those emotions are, and then either take a photo of it or just write a description of it. And
okay.
I've done this study in about, I've lost count, but I think it's about 1,600 people in
Mm,
6 different samples, some in Canada, some in the US, and 2 different samples in China as
okay.
well. So really, fairly good. I mean, obviously there's a lot more countries than that,
Yeah.
but very different environments and very different kinds of cultures.
Mm,
And I consistently, when I do this, and you compare it to things that other kinds of well-being
yeah.
interventions, including 3 good things intervention, the most
Mm,
common intervention. Um, this noticing how nature makes you feel, what I call the noticing nature intervention.
yeah.
Um, these big effect sizes on positive affect, so positive emotions,
Mm,
and on feelings of uh, uh, I call it transcendent connectedness,
yeah.
because it's really how I measure that is feeling connected to other people, to nature, and
Yeah.
just to life as a whole. And then also the other big one was elevation, and that's an interesting emotion because it's not just feeling like woohoo, right? Like not just elevated,
After
but
two
it's
cups
this
of coffee, yay.
emotion. Yeah, like it's this composite emotion of course feeling uplifted,
Yeah.
but also feeling a sense of contentment and deeply moved
Yeah.
and profoundly touched and wonder and uplifted. It's a whole pile of emotions.
Yeah.
And I found that very consistently
Mm,
across all of these different samples, and 6 different samples,
yeah.
the 3 different studies. And the effect sizes are quite large. Like they're generally at the high end or larger compared to
Mm,
other kinds of that the average effect size of a positive psych intervention.
yeah. All right. So once again, by simply noticing the nature based on your samples across different countries, and I guess that again, the noticing nature part is based on the samples, living environments, or whatever it is within their backyard, or is it something has to be outdoor per se? Just curious to know a little bit more.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was really, I mean, very much it's really about noticing how nature makes you feel. So
Mm,
the key of it obviously is noticing nature,
yeah.
but it's also about how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
Those actual emotions that it makes you feel. And
Mm,
this was one of the and this was inside, plants inside your house and outside.
yeah.
And one of the key findings that replicated quite nicely,
Mm,
one of the studies has been published a few years ago, and now there's a backlog of studies that I have that I'm hoping to get out the door, so to speak, this
yeah.
summer. But is this finding that compared to people in the other conditions, these people who had these big boosts in positive affect and this composite emotion of elevation and this big sense of connectedness, they were not spending more time in nature than
Mm,
other people. So
okay.
it's not, of course, spending time in nature is a good thing, and I want to promote that.
Yeah.
I also very much want to get the point across that this is something, this very simple thing that can be put into your everyday routine. It's not about spending more time in nature.
Okay.
It's just noticing how the nature around you makes you feel, like the
Yeah.
plant in your room, the tree at the bus stop, the squirrel outside your window, the dandelion growing out of this crack in the sidewalk that exhibits this enormous amount of, perseverance.
That's good. That's good. So sounds like, once again, correct me if I'm wrong. When you talk about noticing nature, maybe some of these prerequisite will be literally we have to slow down and devote our attentions, because obviously I guess that living into this modern society is so easy that a lot of us are on autopilot modes, and in order to be effective and efficient. So this whole notion of noticing nature means that literally have to slow down, so to speak, smell the roses, watch the squirrels, or to watch the sunset, and just allow that time to get in touch with what exactly is the nature, how does the nature actually making me feel, and also to record them so that we can sort of savor it or to enjoy it a little bit more longer. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like this time thing is really interesting because a lot of research gets focused on spending more time in
Yeah.
nature. And I think that's a good thing. It just at the same time, my research, really keeps showing that people, like even doing this intervention, that they're not spending more time in nature. They're not changing their routine. They're just keeping an eye for it. Like, I mean, I think of what students have, well, some of these were students writing, as I was late for class and running to class, I happened to notice the rose bush. And like, it's little things like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a small but an important aspect of why this is so important, is because it makes people aware of their surroundings. Surroundings that there aren't normally, people aren't normally cognizant of the nature around them. And I think noticing how it makes you feel, of course, being mindful, that's a huge part of it, right?
Yeah.
When we look at some recent studies by John Zielinski and out of Carleton, where people go for a walk in nature, or people go for a walk in nature with some mindfulness instructions ahead of it, that mindfulness instructions, that cognitive aspect makes a difference, boosts positive affect better. And you're right, because so much of our lives, we seem to unfortunately have spread this Western ideal of being, running around like insane people, which I think we are, being all busy all the time and never just being, and never just noticing the beauty around us.
Yeah. And I like your suggestions, because once again you emphasize that noticing nature intervention is not about spending more time, because I guess that sometimes we can get to the point that we have to spend 3 times a week doing exercising, and then 3 times a day in doing the mindfulness breathing exercises, and then so many kind of prescriptive kind of suggestions or recommendation. But this literally to leverage the day-to-day lifestyle and see how we can actually incorporate and integrate it into what we've already been doing, rather than carve away another additional time to do another to-do list to boost my well-being.
Yes, sorry, I'm not good at throwing my arm. I'm not good at not being enthusiastic. That's exactly that. I just want to reach out and give you a hug. If it wouldn't be creepy. That's exactly it. Because I think that, I think of, like during the semester when you're teaching and you're working 70, 75 hours a week, because there's just so much to do in lecture prep. Having to, wow, and now you're asking me to add something to my day, even if I know it's going to be being. But if you're just asking me, wow, when I'm walking to campus or walking to the bus, or if you drive to campus, whatever, to work, to just look around me, okay, and see how things make me feel. You know what? I can do that. That's not an extra thing in my day. Yeah. And I found also that when I did a follow-up, and granted it was a short follow-up, it was just a week, but people spent significantly greater number of days engaged in that intervention compared to even just the writing 3 good things that happened every day.
Yeah.
Because it's not taking up extra time.
That's right. And we love that. You see, we love to leverage what we've already been doing.
It's even.
That's right. That's right.
I
Okay.
think too that, it really, I'm really big on making, just interjecting. We often think of well-being, I think of sort of having this kind of like exercise, right? Like you have,
Mm,
here's your time for exercise, here's your well-being boost, here's your
yeah.
cognitive boost, as opposed to, I think it's really important to have these little tiny sprinklings of moments of meaning and beauty and playfulness and nature
Mm,
in your day.
yeah.
And they can be really brief, right? Like it's about moments and not
Yeah.
minutes. That's how I like to describe it.
That's right. And suddenly I just have this analogy in my head, maybe appropriate. It's almost like celebrating my birthday in the sense that, or at least that my family's loved it. And my wife and my son like to make a big deal about my birthday, that I got to be spoiled, almost all my wishes come true. But then apart from that one day, for the rest of 364 days, again, it's also continue to do that, establishing meaningful connection with my family, continue to enjoy the day-to-day life routines. So there's a time to do the incremental things, but there's a time also to, let's say, have a huge birthday celebration that we deliberately make it a big deal. Other times, just everyday life.
Exactly. And I think, with nature, that's just it, right? Notice the everyday nature around you. And at the same time, for sure, when you have time,
Mm,
go for longer walks in the park. Go, sit under the tree in your backyard. Go to the beach, I guess, if you live
yeah,
by the beach or the mountains or
yeah,
wherever you are, or the desert. I gave a talk and to some people in Dubai,
mm,
right? And then that's really what their nature
yeah,
is the desert. And it's quite I'd love to go there sometime, but it's quite a
yeah.
beautiful place.
That's good. That's good. So when it comes to, I guess that the underlying mechanism, I'm just curious to find out, how can noticing nature help to enhance our well-being? So what is actually going behind the scenes, so to speak?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And so, I mean, when we look at this, like the mechanism of change, I guess,
Yeah.
the mechanism of how this does this, we look at, there's a bunch of different theories that I think are quite fascinating. And of course, there's biophilia, which
Mhm.
is essentially just saying that this is who we are as human beings, right? Like we
Mm,
evolved. We're just animals who happen to be called Homo sapiens sapiens, and we're a pretty young species, relatively speaking.
mm,
And we evolved in in a natural environment. We grew up in this environment where it was conducive to our survival to emotionally respond to aspects of our environment. And
mm,
our environment was non-human, the natural environment. So that's one argument for, in
yeah.
theory, sort of grounding why we're drawn to this. Other theories are things like perception. One of my favorite actually is perceptual fluency account.
Okay.
And this is that when you look at brain imaging studies of how much brain power is sent, and I'm not a neuroscientist,
Yeah.
which is going to be very obvious by how I describe this, but when you look at the amount of brain activity that's going on, how much energy, I guess, it's taking
Mm,
really to process human-made objects compared to processing and categorizing, et cetera, non-human made objects, so
yeah.
natural objects. It takes us a lot less brain power. We perceive things more fluently with less energy, with less cognitive
Okay.
energy, natural environments. And so we're drawn to that, right? That's going to help restore our attention. We're
Mm,
going to have leftover resources, so to speak, for feeling feeling restored and feeling good emotions
yeah.
compared to looking at flashing neon lights, for example.
Mm,
And then part of that too is the whole thing of fractals, which I just think are the coolest thing, because fractals, right, are the mathematical dimensions of something,
mm,
and particularly it's infinitely repeating pattern. So if something has, if you look at a fern, it's got this pattern, but no
mm,
matter how strong of a microscope you look at it, that pattern, that the actual physical pattern is repeats and repeats and
yeah.
repeats. And in a number of different studies on fractals using computer graphics, actually, what researchers have found is that this intermediate range of fractalness, I don't know if that's a proper term, but
Mm,
we'll just say that it is, intermediate range of fractalness is the one that we seem to like the best. And that
okay.
seems to kick off a bunch of alpha brain waves and this feeling feeling awake, but also rested at the same time. And nature, that is such a common, that's pretty much how nature is designed. Those are so common in nature. It's called a fingerprint of nature. So I think we've got a whole lot of things going on there at a very fundamental level that helps to explain why we're inherently drawn to natural environments, and why just being around nature and just noticing it like that, why it does make us feel good.
All right, fascinating. So in a nutshell, someone saying that our brains almost like why are drawn to the nature elements, because it just gives us this energy or refreshing kind of components. As you say, based on the brain imaging research, that it seems to be more effortless for us to actually be able to enjoy the different dynamic dimensions, the shapes, the colors, and changings and the patterns, and our brains simply love it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Our brains really love that. But that's the environment our brains developed in to process information. We didn't evolve in this way most of people in the world live now, where there's just all this information all the time. It's just not normal for us as human beings, right? It's really not.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I know that early on you talk about the noticing nature as part of the intervention. I'm just wondering whether there's other activities that we can do to enhance our well-being through noticing and engaging with everyday nature.
Oh, definitely. I think there's lots of things. So obviously that's one of them, is just notice the nature around you. I think that's a good place to start. The other things you can do is there's another intervention, so to speak, by Miles Richardson and colleagues from the University of Derby, and that was 3 good things in nature. So that was looking at basically every day, and that was a slightly different, right? Because that was every day, notice and write down 3 good things about nature that you saw that day. So that's really based on the 3 good things, the common positive psych thing of write 3 good things. That's one thing. Another sort of way we could do it. But I think also is just really incorporating nature into your daily life. So bringing plants into your house. When you do have extra time, going for those walks, right? Going for those walks in areas that have more nature in them. Watching nature shows even on TV, like those, because there's lots of studies on that, show that those still boost well-being. Not as good as real nature, but they still boost well-being.
Yeah. Good to know.
So I think there's lots of ways that we can start bringing nature into our daily lives and bringing it into our homes and making it, just really enhancing our sense of nature connectedness. Feeling that we're part of this. This is part of who I am as an individual. Looking at the beauty of it, at what it means to you. What emotions does it have for you?
Yeah. Suddenly I have this wacky idea when you talk about nature, which also involves something that's non-human. I'm just thinking that noticing or engaging nature is that the other part for me is that enjoying food. Looking at the beautiful apple tree, I cut the apple and noticing that, and then I eat it and then enjoying the taste. Food preparations, because I do enjoy doing experimental cooking, looking at these natural ingredients, whether that can be also part of the noticing nature and engaging with nature.
I love that idea. And that's so interesting, because I'm a terrible cook, like really bad. So that's not like a thing for me. I like eating, but I'm really not, I'm not allowed in the kitchen at home. But yes, that idea of, and interesting that you had mentioned that about food, because a student of mine this past semester actually did this beautiful video as an assignment about nature connectedness, and looking at, partly gardening too, right? Very much, but even just going to the grocery store and looking at the kinds of food, right? Like you go to the grocery store, and actually for some reason I always take photos of the celery and the lettuce and stuff. It's just they make great photos, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, recognizing that's not that's this connection to something greater than human, but we have a connection to it, right? And it's becoming part of it. I think that's a brilliant way to also connect with nature and just this whole, because one of the things why nature is, and noticing it and being in nature is so helpful to our well-being is because of that big sense of connectedness, right? And connectedness is the essence of meaning in life, like to know that we are part of something that's bigger than us,
Yes.
a bigger system, and a system that even with all the climate crises going on right now, the sun still rises in the east and it sets in the west. Leaves still fall, well, depending where you live, I suppose, but leaves still fall off the trees and tides still come and go. And that's certainly something that from the research that's coming out now of how people have been coping with COVID is recognizing how nature has been so important to people in that.
Yeah.
But gosh, that thing about food, I really, my head's kind of going ding, ding, ding. I want to do that would be a great research study to do. So that's going to be on the list now. But yeah.
That's good. That's good. So at the more macro level, I'm just wondering how can organizations, government agencies, and community leaders leverage nature to build their employees and members' well-being?
Great point, and it's something that's so overlooked. And I was speaking with somebody earlier today, actually, on how there's such good research on. We know, for example, there are people. I mean, this is years and years old now, but people in hospitals who have a view of nature outside their window. Right, get out of the hospital earlier. They take less pain medication. Workers who have a view of nature from their windows are, anywhere around 15% more creative. They enjoy their jobs more. They take less sick days. Students with plants, even just in the back of the classroom, have and windows tend to do better in classes. They learn more. They enjoy classes more. They skip school less. And these are such easy things to incorporate, right? Like when was the last time? I can't even think of any example actually, except if I take it with me, is when there are plants in a university classroom. We design our buildings in this weird sterile manner that is just so unfortunate, given those wealth of research to show how important these very simple changes can be. And I think for organizations with their employees, certainly making sure that break areas have nature and have plants, and that people have time and access to nature, and maybe even incentives for. Oh, I'd have to think that one through. How you'd have. Right, but even incentives for maybe for walking to work. There's interesting apps where you can, and of course I can't think of the name of it now, but apps where you, it's not the most efficient route, it's the route that takes you on the best way for your well-being. Which is really interesting, right? So I do think this is a really important aspect for organizations to understand the importance of nature to employees' well-being, and realistically at the bottom line, in cities as well, the bottom line, that is going to increase workers' productivity. You increase well-being, you increase productivity. I mean, if you just want to throw all the humanness out of it and just look at the money, it's a good bet money-wise. From a city point of view, city planning point of view, cities sometimes just miss this altogether, right? With needing to plant green space and making sure, and particularly in low income areas, and I would think for workers too in factories, that's just not even given a thought. Yet we know. We know from all that research from Francis Q that did in Chicago, where a little bit of grass, we're not even talking like beautiful trees, we're talking a little bits of patches of grass, and lower personal violence, lower property crime rates, greater social well-being. such important. It's such an enormous. It takes very little effort to plan these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But the benefits are huge. And they have this trickle down effect, right? For well-being and physical well-being. That's going to impact budgets and healthcare budgets.
Absolutely. And I guess that, again, a lot of organizations, government agencies, perhaps not focus, they can invest a lot in terms of the modern technology, the IT aspects, and with the hope that people tend to be more productive, more effective, more efficient. But yeah, as you mentioned, something as simple as incorporating the natural elements into the workplace, into the city planning, has a lot of not only the immediate benefit, but also the long-term positive effects as well.
Yes, exactly. Quite a few years ago, I used to work for the federal government here in Canada, and in some of our offices, some people, of course, had windows, and some people were growing tomatoes and stuff, and it was great, right? And we kind of had to lobby for that,
Yeah.
but that was really, it changes everything.
Mm. Also, another question is like, I understand that when I talk about these green plants and green elements in the workplaces, it seems that it's also getting more and more popular. People getting fake plants or fake green elements that is still man-made. I'm just wondering whether it actually does any good, whether it can provide the same impact as the real plant. Especially for people say that I don't have my green thumbs, I kill the plant, so I just want to have something green in my office space, and therefore just get a fake plant.
I have to write that down. Sorry. I know that there's been studies, and Peter Kahn has done a number of these from University of Washington in Seattle, looking at people who've the impact of, we call it like technologically mediated nature.
Yeah.
So, having your screensaver being something, it's not a coincidence that Windows called it Windows, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's windows to the outer world. But looking at, there's lots of studies showing that even just showing pictures of nature and videos of nature, or all those great David Attenborough nature films, all of those, we know that you watch those and your well-being, you get a well-being boost. That's very solid evidence.
Okay.
I don't know if there have been any studies on fake. Obviously, live plants are going to be a bigger boost. Live nature always is. I don't know if there is anyone, for fake. I'm going to have to run that study and see. That would be really fascinating. My guess would be that it would provide some boost. Well, maybe it would provide a boost based on how realistic the plants are. I don't know. That's a study we need to run.
Another research ideas proposal.
And it's interesting even to think of that, though, of why do we do that, right? We do that because because we are inherently drawn to this. Yeah. We are inherently drawn to the natural world.
Yes. Interesting, fascinating ideas once again, and then the possibilities. Because when I'm thinking about their questions, I was aware that for some other people, at least a lot of people, may have limited access to nature due to their immediate working and living environment. So I'm just thinking of what else can they do to use nature to enhance their well-being?
Right, and that's certainly, and particularly and again, COVID in different places, I think that Australia has done quite well with it. Other places have not, and certainly we have not handled it well here, particularly well in Alberta. But I know when I was in the UK, right at the beginning of this whole thing, and that was something I spoke to a lot of media about, and what can you do, right? And I think that when you do have limited access to nature, I don't know why I'm going access, but access to nature, it really is about bringing it in to your life, right? Like when you're going to the grocery store, like you say, Ashley, you can commune with nature, was a very poor choice of words. Thinking about nature, that the different food, but also there are always flowers to buy at the grocery store. There's always plants, bringing that into your house. And really even, I think, noticing, you can always go out and look at the sky. You can always go out and look at, at stars, at the moon at least, depending, and that as well as nature, right? And I think that we need to broaden our definition of what nature is. Kind of brings us back to the beginning of
That's right.
of our talk here. But I think two things. I think one, we need to broaden our definition of what access to nature actually means. And that is about bringing that into your home through plants and noticing there's probably a lot more nature around people than they think.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think we really, from a societal point of view, need to address the inequalities in society on a number of levels, but inequality in access to nature and access to diverse nature and access to greenery. Because, you know, if you look at different cities, generally, where are patches of green? Where are parks? Where are the big old trees in the expensive neighborhoods?
Yeah.
Where is it more concrete and, you know, very few trees and just buildings? Inner city, very low income areas where people are struggling. And we know that small additions of nature makes a difference to that. And from a gut, so that's really a message that we need to get across to governments and city planners as well, which kind of went a little beyond your question there. Sorry.
Yeah, but which is a very practical and relevant one. And as much we're talking about nature, we also understand that there's this close relationship in terms of social justice, in terms of inequality, in terms of wealth distributions, availability of resources or resource allocations to certain parts of the cities or even certain parts of the world as well. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I think for most people, you probably have more access to nature than you think you do. And it is just about bringing, I should have had the plants here, they're over on that side of my desk, but right, bringing plants into your offices and your homes and looking at the birds and looking at the nature that really is around you when you're on the bus, when you're walking to the bus, all that kinds of thing.
Yeah, brilliant ideas. All right. Holli-Anne, I only have one more last questions for you, and got nothing to do with nature, but maybe the answers could be nature as well, which is, what's one thing that you have been doing this week to look after your well-being?
Oh, excellent question. Wow. I have been taking, actually, I don't generally take breaks during the day. I tend to work at these like 9-hour, 10-hour straight days. So I have actually been forcing myself to take small breaks. And when I take those breaks, and we're talking like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but wow, it's made a huge difference. And generally what I do is if I'm on campus, I just look out the window because it's beautiful views of nature. Or I've been sitting outside on the front step and just watching all the birds. So it does end up having to do with nature. Combination of making myself take little short breaks and also taking my own advice of noticing the nature that's around me.
Yeah, you're definitely walking the talk there. Thank you so much.
I'm trying.
Well, I'm afraid that that's all the time that we have for today. Once again, thank you for joining us, Holli-Anne. And of course, for those of you who are listening or watching, if you want to engage Holli-Anne's expertise in the science of well-being, nature, and meaning in life, you can visit her academic profile page at the Concordia University, or send her an email at Holli-Anne, which is ANNE.Passmore@concordia.ab.ca. I will certainly provide this webpage as well as your email details, if that's all right with you, on the YouTube channels as well. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, thank you for watching. I'm Dimas from Strength Optimizers. We are here to bring out the best in you by optimizing your strengths. Have a fabulous day, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.